there's no one recipe that fits for each and every family business, but sharing some experiences always helps. I now try to walk you through the nearly 150 years of the Henkel history, and I should start with the 3 generations that started the business. In hindsight, it sometimes looked that there always had been a plan, and I'm very happy to sit here, so obviously it turned out to be successful, one transition after the other, but it was not always the case. So some transitions came a little bit by surprise. So my great-great-grandfather, Fritz Henkel, founded the company in 1876, and he was really an entrepreneur like you can think of. He was managing the business, he was interested in nearly everything, and I'm a natural scientist, and I would describe him as pluripotential. He had really many competencies. And he managed to introduce our really first brand, which is Persil, self-acting washing detergent that really changed life of housewives in 1907 until today. And in doing so, he laid the foundation of our company's success, which started with laundry detergent in Germany. And he was quite successful. It took a while, and the company grew. And he married, and the couple had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. The boys were named Fritz, Hugo, and the daughter was Emmy. And this was a first step of our family organization. We are still organized in 3 branches, named by the 3 children. And he also took the boys into the business. One was more the managerial, commercial guy, Fritz. Hugo was more the scientist. He was a chemist. And so things turned out to be well. And unfortunately, in the year 1930, not only the father, but also the son, the eldest son, Fritz, died in the same year. And so it was Hugo who had to take over and run the business all alone for several years. This was not planned, but it worked out well. Then the turbulences of World War came, and he had to manage different problems, but also this worked out well. And the father, Fritz, the founder, had also inherited the shares to the 3 children, 40-40-20. Nowadays, you would say, oh, this is everything but balanced and looks a little bit unfair. But at that time, it was quite modern to give shares to the girl. So the 2 boys had 40% and the girl only 20%, but all of them had a voice when it came to important decisions. So each branch had a voice, a concept we still have implied in some of our decisions. And then Hugo, who ran the company, had 2 sons, and they also went into the business, and also Hugo then handed over to his sons and some cousins. And in the chaotic times of World War II, we had also many turbulences in our business, but also in the management, which was only done by family. And then it was the one son of Hugo, Jost Henkel, who became the next CEO. And he did also well for quite a while, running the business. Yeah, they understood well, and also here the elder son Jost was running the business. The younger son Konrad was again a chemist, loved to stay in the laboratory, and was well distributed the different responsibilities. And Jost was preparing the business, was growing the business, doing it more on an international basis. But also he died at the age of 51, mid of the 50s, all of a sudden, and there was no really succession planning in place. And as all the cousins, more or less, were only ladies, it was only Konrad, his brother, left, who was the only man in that generation, and so he was asked to take over. And first he did not want to, because he was happy in his laboratory. He wanted to continue with the R&D topics, but then he said, okay, I am asked and I will take over. This is the first time we, in our strong belief, he was the first taking a decision where he puts company first and his own ideas and concept of life only second. This was the birth of our belief, company first, family second, individual third. And so Konrad took over. And although he was not really the one wanting to lead the company, he was a very wise and very smart guy in doing so. He took a lot of people to advise him. And he, during nearly 30 years, he was the CEO, very successfully grow the company. We went into the USA, we went in different countries. He started the adhesive business, which now is world market leader. And so he was became really a strong businessman. And during the years, he took two important decisions. First, he decided that he would be the last family member running the business as a CEO. He said the business became too large, too international, that we as a family should not limit the choice of the best person to run the business to the family. We should be open. And when he stepped down as a CEO, the first external professional manager took over to run the company. And the second choice he took together with his relatives was to take the company public. So in 1985, it was for us the first stock listing we took with our shares, and we were not the only owners anymore and went public. So these would be for me also two very important turning points in our history. And when he, with his relatives, decided to do so, he set up two of our governance bodies, which is the shareholders committee you mentioned and the supervisory board. Both are still in place, more or less the same way he established it during his time. You can imagine there were long discussions about that. At that time, some of his cousins were working in the company, not limited to being CEO, but also being manager for a region or running the R&D. And he said we should be wise and as family members stop working in the company. And this is not a recipe that fits for all, but he said, I don't want to tell someone of the family, please leave because you are not successful. It's much easier to say this to external people. You can separate, but if it is a cousin of mine, an uncle of yours, or an aunt, and I have to tell them, please leave, they can leave the job, but they will stay a member of our family. We'll meet each other. And that's a problem and a challenge we could eliminate if we go that way. And it took a while, but everyone was fine with it, and we believe it's, for us at least, still the right way. It's super important to have that balance. If you have a family CEO, then you should have an independent board. Or if, in our case, we have an independent external CEO, but we have the family members in the boards. But also in the boards, it's a balance of family and independent professional advisors, which we feel is absolutely necessary, not only to think in family mind and long term, but also having super experts, professionals from different regions, different industries to challenge us as a sidestep. Continue. Yes, we are in the third generation. Konrad decided to stop as a CEO, invited an external CEO. He then became chairperson of the supervisory board and shareholders committee to have that balance. If the family is not running the company anymore, then we wanted to be as close as possible to the important decisions. So our shareholder committee has to decide on the important topics like large M&A decisions, when it comes to divestments, when it comes to the strategy, to the culture of the company, or who becomes member of the management board. These things have to be decided in the shareholders committee, which is half family, half independent. And so Konrad took over this chair position. When he became older, it was the question who would follow. And in the fourth generation, there were two who could have been successor. And Konrad said, I a little bit leave it to you both. Please clarify who you think should be the one stepping into my shoes. And so it was a conversation between cousins first, and then their generation to decide commonly who should be the next one. I was not a member in the room. Perhaps the conversations were not the easiest, but as you said, this should be done internally, not publicly, and so it came out that Albrecht Wöste, my predecessor, was the one then leading the shareholders committee and the supervisory board in the fourth generation.
And that was
at that days it was more internally a family conversation and decision within the family who should follow. Nevertheless, it's always super important to be aware of what others sees and how do they feel. If somebody becomes the chairperson, you have to be very sure that the person is known by the management board and not only accepted by the family. The person should be on eye level when it comes to business decisions. And so it's a decision that should be well prepared in advance in all the different stakeholder groups. And so it was prepared internally well, and Albrecht Wöste then took over being a chairperson, but all the time with external CEOs really running the business, the day-to-day operational business. Even if the conversation itself might be not the easiest one, both remain very good friends. They were really partners in being chairperson and a member of the shareholders committee. They were very different from their personalities, from their characters, though the different competencies turned out to balance right very well. And if there had been some wounds, they healed over time. And so they really were partners and colleagues, which was great.
Because we always say that this process is required that family has a lot of generosity somewhere, somehow. Because otherwise, when you look at the,
love and harmony in the family, clear decision, analytical and rational in the company, and so you have to merge these two very different ways of living. When Albrecht was the chairperson, it was a very interesting time and important time for Henkel. We sold all the chemical business, so there were important portfolio changes, and in these years the adhesive business became the world market leader, and so it was. And we bought Schwarzkopf and some other brands. So it was really an interesting and an entrepreneurial time. When Albrecht became 72, the conversation in the family started who will become the next chairperson. And so it was Albrecht and a cousin of him who started a process, because they also thought it would be important who would follow. And compared to the elder times when perhaps only one or two persons decided who should follow, it should be more a common decision. And so he both decided to invite around 15 people of my generation.
How many were there at that time?
40.
40,
yeah.
40, and 15 were chosen to...
Yeah. And these 15 people, not all of them could have been the successor of Albrecht, but he said, one of you will be the one, and it's you won't do the job alone. You need friends, you need colleagues, you need partners, you need someone to rely on. So therefore it's of utmost importance that you trust each other, that you have a kind of defense ring and support the one who will come out of the process. And then it took 2 years. We met very regularly in this group of 15 people, and we had different topics we were debating about. We had teaming events, and so during the time it was great for us to know each other much better, to even be able to rely and to trust each other more. And at the end there were perhaps 3 that could have been following him. At the end it turned out the family made an election, so everyone was invited to vote.
Everybody, every generation.
Every shareholder.
The existing generation, the peer generation.
All shareholders with their shares.
With the share, with whatever power or weight they had.
Yeah, so it was like in the AGM, was not decided by person, by heads, by hands, but by a number of shares. And they voted for me, which was a great feeling. But as you just asked, were there any wounds? And it turned out that also this process was very well chosen, because we had the opportunity to come much closer to each other. And yes, two cousins of mine were not chosen, but they always were and are super friends and super reliable colleagues, which for me is of utmost importance. As you said, this kind of generosity in the family, it's not about an individual, it's about what is best for the company now, what is best for the family. And this was in priority number one for all of them. It was quite, for many people also, to vote for me. I was 15 years younger. I was a lady. I was 40 years old. It was for some family members really kind of new era and a kind of risk decision. But they took it. They were able to be entrepreneurial enough, which was great. So it was for me, and I had a wonderful predecessor. Albrecht introduced me into the job for 2 years, invited me to each and every meeting, shared all the mails, we did phone calls together, so it was a very well onboarding process. And now you wanted to...
Encouragement from the family, even if they cannot be part of the project directly.
Yeah, so what I forgot to say, we have a share pooling agreement. When we went public, for us with the voting shares in 1996, it was key to keep majority of the voting shares. So we aligned on a share pool agreement in 96. One of my biggest tasks was to renew this pooling agreement. So
because it lasts, how often has to be?
It lasts forever, but after 20 years you are able to exit the first time in an orderly way. And so I wanted to prolong that, and before it had to be prolonged in 2016, we already in 2013 signed again that pooling contract. And I did not lose any shareholder, which was great. So I invited them all again. But key is that the company is doing well, good figures, good numbers, and running a successful company. But since then, and also before, we are convinced that we are not only a company, we are a family. We meet on a very regular basis. We meet 3 to 4 times a year as a whole shareholding family. We have additional committees, groups, so whenever you are especially interested in the company, we have an information circle that meets 3 times a year with company topics. We have only family events, so 2 times a year we meet for a barbecue, for doing some nice things together, really working on the family side. We are cousins, we have aunts and uncles, and we want to have an emotional home that really keeps us together, so we stick together in good and in bad times, which is key. And this is also done with the next generation, so if the children are still young, they are invited and can play football. If they grow a little bit, we have a kind of scientific lab for kids in our headquarters in Düsseldorf. If they are older, they are invited to how to be digitally safe if you use WhatsApp and X and all that. And then step by step they are introduced into company topics. They are invited for company meetings. They have a deeper dive into sustainability or in the marketing area, and these things to keep them attached to the business emotionally and mindfully, becoming a reasonable and responsible shareholder of the next generation.
Thank you, Simone.
It's in our case, we think it's best of both worlds. We have the advantages of the capital market, which gives access to financial resources. You can grow short-term to mid-term much faster, a high speed of innovation, and a very clear set of rules and regulations when it comes to transparency and also accountability. At the same time, we are family-owned, and we have a much more priority on the long-term view. If 1 or 2 quarters might not show up as investors would like to see it, yes, we feel sad, but we stay with the long-term success. This is really key. And we are a family, but we are also a kind of rational investor with a heart, keeping bumping for the family business. And we stand behind the company. Company first, family second, and this, for us at least, is a good recipe. We can handle it.